My fairly aggressive girlfriend stole from my bank account, so I blew up her entire academic career. I'm a senior at a large state university. This happened in the first semester of my freshman year. I was selected for an honors-type program that placed me in a co-ed dorm building with every other student in the program. As a dumb freshman, I rushed into a relationship with a freshman girl who lived right above me. We'll call her Megan. It was convenient for me to date someone who lived so close, but everyone else in our building hated Megan because she talked a lot, and almost exclusively about herself. She bragged often about being a fairly aggressive person, but somehow I overlooked that mile-wide red flag. Right after Thanksgiving break, at the end of an evening class, I got a call from my mom, who noticed some unusual activity on my checking account. Back then I had no credit card, so this account/debit card was my only access to my savings while I lived on campus. I rarely needed to buy anything during the semester, so I was puzzled to find that $104.29 had left my bank account over 2 weeks, in the form of 6 Grubhub food orders. At this point, I trusted Megan, but I decided to ask her about the money right away. She denied any involvement and suggested that I cancel my debit card. After a really long phone call to the bank, I did just that. Next, I reached out to Grubhub customer service on Twitter. Hey, my card was stolen and used for food orders on these dates. Can I have the receipts? They sent me the first and last receipts, but they had to redact the personal info of the account holder. I say redact in quotes because they just used the Snapchat draw tool, and Megan's name was still clearly visible on both receipts. What's more, the most recent receipt was only 2 hours old. She was probably still eating when I chopped up my debit card. It's worth noting that she and I both had unlimited dining plans, paid for by our respective parents, and we lived 500 feet from the nearest dining hall. She didn't need to order food, and she definitely didn't need my money to do it. So I texted her again. I have the receipts from Grubhub. Are you sure you didn't make those orders? Her reply, fuck you for suspecting me. I hatched a plan to collect security camera footage of her picking up the order from that evening. However, by midnight, Megan arrived at my door in tears and confessed to everything, plus she admitted to being a serial shoplifter. Exhausted, I sent her away and decided to deal with everything in the morning. By the next day, everyone in our building seemed to know what was going down. I sent Megan a breakup text and decided that the $104.29 was a loss. At least I escaped unscathed, right? Well, less than 2 days later, she entered my room when I wasn't looking. I was sitting at my desk when I noticed her standing silently behind me. Megan, give me my stuff. Where's my stuff? Me, what stuff? Megan, you know. I did not know. She tore through the room, looking for something that she refused to identify. Just as quick as she came, she was gone, and I locked the door because obviously this wasn't over yet. Within a minute, she was back. She stood outside my door, knocking and demanding I let her back inside. The knocking quickly got more violent. She started shouting I know your fuck ing in there. And opened the mother ing door. Mind that we lived in this building with students in our program who all know each other, and all of them could hear her. Pretty quickly, Megan was rattling the handle of my door. Next, she began throwing herself at it, shoulder first, trying to break it down. I lived next door to my RA, but judging by the lack of any intervention, he was elsewhere. So I whipped out my phone and texted him to send backup. Meanwhile, I saw my heavy wooden door bending and buckling. I even heard it crack a bit. My RA was on duty in another building, so he sent 3 of his colleagues to de-escalate the situation. They brought Megan downstairs, where she revealed that the stuff she wanted was just the t-shirt and keychain that she gave me for my birthday. Whatever, I let her have those. I still just wanted this to be over. However, once I shared my story with the resident life staff, they filed university paperwork to place a no-contact order between me and Megan. They also recommended I contact the campus police, who then told me I should get my stolen money back in small claims court. At the request of the campus police, I also contacted the Title IX office at my school, sending them the story of everything you've read so far. They were interested, to say the least, although I didn't want any trouble. I just wanted a clean breakup and a fresh start, but a Title IX representative informed me that they were bringing 3 misconduct charges against Megan: theft, threatening/violent behavior, and inciting an intervention by university staff. The representative asked me to serve as a witness in Megan's disciplinary hearing the next semester. I tentatively agreed, right before the representative set the hearing date for February 14th. Valentine's Day. I thought it was a joke, but they really did that. When the day of the hearing finally arrived, the no-contact order was still in effect, but a few of my friends had kept tabs on Megan. For starters, she failed all of her classes in the fall. Someone in my math course confessed that Megan had tried to sleep with him while she was dating me, and he had to repeatedly tell her no. Even worse, Megan kept telling a twisted version of the whole story to try and turn my friends against me. So when I found out that she had found a new boyfriend, it felt good to know that the V-Day disciplinary hearing ruined whatever evening plans they might have made. I arrived alone at the disciplinary board office, unsure what to expect. The board consisted of grad students, and the hearing was expected to run into the night. Unlike me, Megan did not come alone. She brought both of her parents as character witnesses. And that's not all. Megan's parents also paid a lawyer to defend her against the charges. The board knew that was unnecessary, but Megan's parents believed so strongly in their daughter's innocence that they had already paid for this 3-piece suit to make her case. In the name of fairness, the board members offered me pro bono legal representation, a junior economics major, who we'll call Jimmy. Jimmy had already read my account of the events from the fall, and thanks to my screenshots of Grubhub receipts, he said there was an okay shot of the charges sticking. Then I told him something I'd kept secret for months. When Megan tried to break down my door and I whipped out my phone to text my RA, I also filmed the whole thing. Jimmy couldn't get enough of the video. There was Megan, kicking and screaming and clearly trying to break into my dorm room. It was all the evidence I needed, and no one saw it coming. In the hearing, when the time came for me to make the case against Megan, Jimmy played the video on a big screen in front of everyone. The room went insane. In that instant, I realized that Megan really had convinced everyone I was the liar. In her version of the story, I gave her permission to buy food using my account. She told her parents that she'd asked me politely for her belongings, which I'd rudely hidden from her in my dorm room. In Megan's story, I was the sociopath trying to ruin her reputation. Before I unveiled the video, it was her word against mine. I still didn't want revenge. Even after finding out that Megan tried to cheat on me. But when I saw her parents flipping out at the video, "Why didn't you tell us you did this?" And her lawyer raising hell, "This evidence was not provided in pretrial disclosure." And a board member standing over him, "Sir, this is not a court of law. Please return to your seat," and him shouting objection. And her replying, "We don't have objections, this isn't a court of law," and Jimmy, my new best friend, just trying not to laugh out loud. That's when I realized how good revenge can feel when it's fair and deserved. The board found Megan responsible for all 3 charges. My side of the bench recommended the university terminate her housing contact and force her to pay restitution. Her side recommended only restitution and a reprimand. The board was compromised. Her family paid back most of the money she stole, and Megan was forced to move into a different dorm building. This probably would have helped her anyway because every student in our program's building knew everything she'd done and lied about. They wouldn't speak to her, and no one wanted to be her roommate. By the time she had to move buildings, she'd already failed all of her courses again. Having paid for her tuition, her unused dining plan, her lawyer, and her restitution, Megan's parents finally pulled her out of school. Today I effed up by hiding in my girlfriend's room when her strict Asian parents suddenly came home. I am currently stuck in my girlfriend's room while she and her family are having dinner downstairs. I haven't eaten since morning nor showered and I need to take a poop. Backstory to this morning: since the lockdown for COVID-19 happened, I haven't seen my girlfriend for over a month plus. Our government recently relaxed the quarantine so we are allowed to go out but not loiter. Woke up to my girlfriend's call around 11 a.m. saying that her parents went out to get something. I thought okay, I'll come over, return her a camera I borrowed and maybe we can sit in my car around her neighborhood and hang out a while. It was a little rushed as her parents just left her house as I left mine. I'm about 20 minutes away from her place. She assured me her parents will be out for at least 1.5 hours as they need to get lunch. I drove as fast as I could and picked her up from the front of the house and we drove to park nearby to hang out. After a couple of minutes, I asked if she brought some water as I asked her about it before I came and she said no. She said why don't you come in and take some water since her parents will still be far away. I said yes, obviously, and went in, drank water and we sat on the couch for a while to cuddle. I was a little paranoid but I haven't seen her in a long time so I needed it. About 10 minutes, we hear a car outside her house and that's how today I effed up. It was her parents. They were only out for 40 minutes. My life, we panicked. Luckily I parked away from her house and took my slippers in. I contemplated just owning up and lying that I needed to use the toilet but her mom is really difficult. She would assume my girlfriend was lying and get her trouble and I haven't even met her parents officially as her boyfriend yet. If you are from an Asian family or have heard of Asian parents being strict about relationships, it's true. We both ran up to her room and I hid behind her door. Mind you, her room is really small. It's about the CZ of 2 single beds. Can't hide under the bed as she has to keep her door open and you can see straight under her bed from the stairs. The only place possible is behind her door. I stood there frozen AF as she went down to greet her parents. I could hear them coming in as I hugged the wall as tightly as I could. She came back up freaking out but I said it's okay. Let's just try formulate a plan. She said okay and she went down to eat with them first. Which I had to stay as silent as possible with no fan or air conditioning so I sweated my butt off. 1 p.m.-ish. She comes back up and we try to listen whether her parents are coming up or not. They usually sit downstairs after lunch and nap, which they did. Gave me a little bit of relief as I could sit down on the floor. The space in between the door and her table is super tiny which is uncomfortable but I'm not complaining. 2 p.m. her dad comes up to shower and her door is right next to the bath area. Damn, I can hear the water rushing. But good news, my girlfriend is in the room doing her work so she can look out. It's weird as I'm just standing up behind the door and looking at her look back at me. After his shower, her dad leaves to go to his store which leaves her mom downstairs. She gets on a long phone call which gives me a bit of room to relax. My girlfriend and I make out a bit to calm our nerves and I gotta say it did help. For the next 3 hours, her mom stays downstairs and we try to formulate a plan but everything involves the timing of her parents which is impossible. Can't jump out the window cause it's grilled and she doesn't have the key. Around 5:30 p.m.-ish, her dad comes home and almost effing comes into her room. He asks her to print something and she quickly walks to her door to stop him from coming in. I hear his voice right outside the door. Thankfully he walks away and goes down to watch TV. And I swear to God the universe wants us to suffer because right after that her mom comes upstairs and hangs about the common area. My girls had recorded a Zoom meeting so she tells her mom she has a meeting and plays it and closing the door giving my legs much needed rest and I sit. 7 p.m., her mom calls her from downstairs that it's time to eat. And that's where we are at now. It's currently 9 p.m. at this sentence and I can hear her family talking to each other. She has to turn off the lights and fan and air conditioning so I'm freaking drenched in my sweat in the dark. I'm sitting down but I've got pins and needles in my feet now. I would stand up but because the area is so tight, I don't want to risk any noise. Oh, remember how I haven't eaten and need to poop? That's attacking now. My stomach is growling and I'm making fart noises. I'm so scared to be caught cause my parents are gonna slaughter me too. My girlfriend and I will discuss our plans for me to escape when she comes up. Update 1, they are done with dinner. My girlfriend brought me some water and biscuits, but I don't have the appetite to eat. Don't want to drink too much as I would risk needing to go to the toilet. She went back to do the dishes. Update 2, it's 9 p.m. and my girlfriend is in her room. She told her family she is playing Animal Crossing with her friends, so hopefully her parents don't barge it. We're gonna formulate a plan for me to escape now. I can finally stretch my legs. Update 3, we have a plan. 9:30 p.m. we're going to wait for their parents to head up to their room. She's going to check if their door is closed and where they are looking at it. She'll bring me downstairs and I'll hide in the storeroom. She'll then go and tell her parents she's taking photos of the night, and no worry if the door alarm rings, cause they have an alarm system in place. She'll unlock the main door, the outside small gate, and leave it open for Abbott, gated and guarded area, so it's pretty safe. She'll go check on her parents as they like to look at what she is doing from their room. Once she's confirmed they are not looking, she'll get me from the storeroom. I'll go all the way out and hide behind a pillar in front of her house. She'll lock everything and go back up and check her parents are not looking out, and I'll walk to my car, so I don't startle her dog. Sounds pretty legit as she knows her parents' schedule the best. Update 4, 9:41 p.m. Showed my girlfriend this post and we're reading the comments. Really means a lot to us that everyone is supportive. Makes the nerves less frightening. We're hugging it out and playing Animal Crossing till her parents go to sleep at around 11. Update 5, I'm still here and it's around 10:30. My time zone is GMT +8 for those who are still invested. We're just preparing for when her parents go to bed, so we're trying to calm our nerves. Update 6, it's 11 but her parents are not sleeping. For some strange reason her mom decided to bake at like 10:30. Starting to think they suspect something. Update 7, yes. My girlfriend just went to down and her mom is done baking and says she is going to sleep soon. Which just leaves her dad still watching TV. I'm almost out, I can feel the wind already. Just can't get too trigger happy and jump the Glock. Update 8, FFFK. Her mom just walked past her room. Heading into her own room. Her dad also getting ready to sleep. Things are about to happen, guys. Phase 1 of our plan is about to commence. Update 9, damn, her mom went to bed but her dad is still watching TV. It's like 11:30 p.m. and he is still watching? At least her mom is in her room, so that is good. Update 10, okay, plan is in action. Her dad is now in their room and she is moving my stuff downstairs to the storeroom. I'll update once I'm inside. Update 11, took my last sip of water and went down to the storeroom. Phase 1 complete. Her dad is showering, her parents' door is closed. Now for the front door and gate. Up to 12, girlfriend opening the door and the gate. I have to wait for her. 13, slight change, I went out the door together with her. Her dog isn't barking, so that's good. She has to open the gate. 14, out the gate. Bending down. Waiting for her text me. 15, she's taking some photos to sell the story. Better not rush it. Her dog is getting very close to me and sniffing me, thought the gate. Oh God, please don't bark. Final update. FING hell, guys. I made it. I just started the engine and my heart is pounding. I'm safe and sound. Time to go home. Got out 11:53. Post clarification. It's 12:15 a.m. I'm home sipping a hot cup of Milo and laughing with my girlfriend about the entire day. We just want to thank everyone that supported us in this crappy situation we put ourselves in. The nerves were real and seeing how everyone wanted the best for us really helped us push through this emotionally. Am I the a-hole for telling my sister-in-law that it's no wonder nobody likes her because she's a spoiled, judgmental mother ducker? My wife and I are married and we are expecting a baby together. My sister-in-law, Molly, is the golden child in my wife's family. My wife has mentioned that to me before and she doesn't speak to her parents very often, or her sister for that matter. My experiences with Molly have been interesting to say the least. When I first met her she asked me intrusive questions about intimacy, money, etc. We left because she wouldn't stop. She judged my dad for having me as a single dad by choice, using a surrogate. That was after she called me a liar, insisted that I had a mom, and when she accepted that it was just my dad and me, she insisted I must have been adopted by him. She called him selfish, said he was a bad father. All kinds of things. We left then too because she again would not stop saying that crap. She always believes she can tell people what to do and they should listen, because she thinks she knows best on everything. My wife and I ended up becoming more distant from Molly when Molly seemed to seek us out just to share more of her wisdom with us. Then a few months ago she reached out to my wife and said she had nobody else but their parents and how her friend had broken up with her by calling her names and saying she was insufferable. My wife was trying to see if she and Molly could be closer. She had Molly apologize to me and they were slowly building up a relationship. Then several days ago Molly asked what we were naming our baby. My wife said we were not sharing it until the baby was born. She told us to name the baby Emily or Henry so the baby doesn't have a dumb name like mine. My wife told her we were not taking suggestions for names. Molly told me I shouldn't be like my dad, I should be better and not give our kid a dumb name. She brought up how her parents thought she had the best baby names. My wife told her she didn't care what their parents thought, that this was our baby and we would name them. Molly told her that she shouldn't discard their parents since they raised them and that she was always the wiser one and people need to listen to her more because she gives out good advice to people. Then she suggested my father had bad motives for having me alone and I snapped. I told her it was no wonder nobody liked her or wanted her around because she's a spoiled, judgmental jerk and I was sick and tired of hearing her stupid effing advice because she's clueless. Molly burst into tears and called me in a hole. My wife laughed and told me it was what she was thinking. Molly then left and later sent a text to my wife saying what I said was so mean. What was your dumbest realization that everyone knows? As a kid I was raised in an Islamic household. Thing with being Islamic in America is there aren't any good Muslim schools to send your child so they could learn both faith and have a decent education. So my parents decided to send me to a Catholic school since it was closest to the values they wanted me to live by. At home, my grandmother would tell me stories from the Quran. I loved those stories, but sometimes, my grandmother would stop her storytelling voice and use her fact voice. Like she was telling me something that happened at the store. She was using her fact voice when she was telling me about the story of how a father had to sacrifice his son to God, but when he tried to bring down the knife, it wouldn't hurt his son because God had willed that his dedication meant he no longer needed to sacrifice his son. So I asked my grandmother if I could become invincible to knives if I believed in God enough, and she told me no, don't take the story literally. Take the meaning of the story. Also known as do not stab yourself. So I was like, ooh, all of these stories are metaphorical. The Bible at my school and the Quran at home are both collections of stories filled with wisdom meant to be interpreted as the situation sees fit. Like a superhero story where Jesus and Muhammad are the main characters. They're meant to help the story deliver me a meaning like Ash from Pokemon. I think you see where this is going. I thought they were stories. They're not real. And I grew up thinking that these religions were a way of life, not to be taken literally. Cut to driving with a friend from school through California to Palm Springs to see her grandmother. We were talking about how hot it was and I joked about how we needed a flood to cool us down. Where's God's wrath when you need, right? She laughed and started to draw the conversation to her admiration of Jesus. We started talking about miracles and hungry people and I said, man, I wish we could do those kind of miracles for real. The world could use a few. And she replied something along the lines of, well, who knows? Jesus could be back soon, and I chuckled. Did that thing where you blow air out of your nose and smile. I thought it was a joke. Like Superman is gonna come fly us to her grandma's house. And she looked at me and asked me why I laughed. I told her I thought she was being sarcastic. She corrected me that she was not. Then I asked her, wait, are you saying like Jesus could actually, really show up on Earth? She got upset and said yes. Then the rest of the car ride was quiet. So instead of thinking Jesus is real, I thought, wow, my friend must be really gullible. Then once I got home, I told my grandmother about it. I thought it'd be a funny story. Like telling someone that your friend thinks elves are real. But she looked at me and went up, Muhammad is real. And so was Jesus. What are you talking about? For the next 10 minutes we kept talking and I started to realize that, oh my God, my grandmother thinks the stories are real. Does everyone think that the stories about water turning into wine, and walking on water, and touching sick people to heal them was real? Lastly, I pulled my pastor aside at school. And I asked him straight up, is Jesus real? And of course he was confused and said yes and asked me if I thought Jesus wasn't real. I told him what I had thought my whole life and he goes, yeah, everything in the Bible actually happened. So I asked him why none of those miracles have happened now or at all recorded in history, and he goes, I don't know, but the Lord does and we trust him. So now my friend doesn't talk to me. School is weird now because all of these ridiculous, crazy stories about talking snakes, angels visiting people, and being brought back from the dead are all supposed to be taken literally. And asking questions about it isn't okay either, apparently. So yep. That's eye-opening. What is the most badass thing your parent has ever done? This happened during college. I was down with viral fever and had to take a break for 3 days. My best friend, a girl, was in constant touch via phone and she sounded dull. When asked what the problem was, she said it was nothing and I thought she worried about my health. Day 4, I returned to college and I learned that a guy from a different department was teasing her, in an abusive way, and was stalking her every day. And she, being a very reserved and not so brave, did not even tell it outside. I went and punched the mofo right on his face and broke a couple of teeth. His friends came for his help and started attacking me and my friends came in from nowhere. Once this gang war was done, I and that guy were taken along with our friends to the principal's office and he started hurling scoldings one after the other. I was a bright student and was always in the good books of every professor and thus it came as a shock to everyone. They called all of our parents and my dad came. Even my friend was taken into account here and her mom was called to the college. She didn't have a dad. Everybody, my head of the department, my principal started scolding me and gave my dad a transfer certificate to fill up for me to take me out from the current college and put me somewhere else. They also told me I had spoilt my career now due to this and for also having a relationship, typical Indian brains you know, roam around with a girl and she is your girlfriend. My dad remained calm and filled up the form and asked if there are any more procedures to be done. The principal and Hod were stunned, they were apparently just trying to scare us, and asked him if he wasn't worried about my future. I still remember what he said. If I was him, I would have done the same. What he did was right. No one should stand by when a woman is being harassed. I want my son to be on the front lines to stand up for any sort of injustice. I know the girl for the past 14 years and she and my son have been friends since then. Everyone got a month's suspension and the opposite team got 2 months suspension, except for that guy who harassed her. He voluntarily got a transfer to some other college. I came out of college as a guy with triple placement and being the highest paid recruit of that year. My in-laws kicked out my sister-in-law when she came out, so I forced them to sell their house. My sister-in-law came out as a trans woman when she was 18. My wonderful in-laws kicked her out of the house then and there. They told her to leave the house and threw her out at 8 p.m. with no money or even any documents, and her father took the car keys from her too. She had to walk 8 miles to get to our place. She was crying and we took her in. This is horrible behavior, but my husband and I would have just cut them off if it was all they did, but they doubled down. They refused to hand over any of the documents and my brother-in-law had to go over and barge into their house to get them. They also cleaned up all the money in a joint account. She had saved up $8K working part-time all through high school. They took the money and also sold her car, which was in their name. They were trying to ruin her life as much as they could. My father-in-law is a small-time businessman and his biggest account was supplying my employer. I had helped him get the contract and it was very lucrative for him. My employer was a family business and they treated long-term employees more like family than as employees. I was talking to my boss about what happened. He told me that if I could find someone within 5% range of the price my father-in-law offered, they would make the switch. My father-in-law offered us really great rates. He was very good at his job, but he had effed up the contract because even though always brought from him, we weren't obligated to buy from him. We could switch suppliers anytime, but he got complacent and assumed we wouldn't switch suppliers. It took me 6 months of painful searching to find a supplier who could replace him and get us great rates. This was not a major part of my duties and I had to put in way more hours than normal to find the damn supplier, but when I did find them, I waited for a month before informing my boss. See, my in-laws had been planning to do major renovation for a long time and it involved tearing down a major portion of their house. I waited until the renovation work had truly started before informing my boss. We started to get supplies from the new supplier the next month itself. It crushed his business. It effed his unit economics and he had to scramble to find new customers. They ended up having to sell their house to save the business and they didn't get a good rate for it because the house was well half torn down when they sold it. My in-laws did try to get money from my brother-in-law, but he told them to F off. My father-in-law is a decent businessman and he did crawl his way out of the hole they dug for themselves, but even 8 years later they still haven't bought a new house. I have heard they are still sour about what happened. I mean, I was just doing my job and if they had just kicked her out, they would still have the house. What is a great really passive-aggressive baby shower gift? When I was first married our living room was blue. Mother-in-law gave me brown decor. I said nothing and let it go. A couple years later we moved and our living room was brown. Mother-in-law gave us blue decor. Again I ignored it. Mind you, when she gave either gift she would say, I know the living room is brown but I love this, tacky, low-quality gift, so I couldn't resist. We were expecting our first child. Mother-in-law asked how we were decorating the nursery. I said Mickey Mouse but all Disney characters. She said great choice, there are so many things currently with that theme. But, why Mickey Mouse? I said he's cute and happy. Sister-in-law commented a friend had decorated her nursery in Raggedy Ann and Andy. I said it's a sad memory for me as my cousin's 2 babies died in their nursery because of a house fire a few years before. Their nursery was all Raggedy Ann and Andy. I didn't think I could walk in every day and see that. Mother-in-law was there listening. She asked the particulars about the fire. A week later mother-in-law came over with decorations. She is so happy and excited. It was Raggedy Ann and Andy. She said, I know you said Mickey but I love this stuff, so reconsider your theme. It's been a couple years, so put it behind you and use these. After all, this baby's grandma and should have some clout in these decisions. Then she gets pouty that the room is already painted and decorated. She told me to put up the pictures anyway. There is no way I would ever want to see that every day. In my hormonal condition the last thing I needed was dealing with that. Please don't be that person. It's supposed to be a happy time with happy memories. We have no happy memories of mother-in-law. But my husband let her know it upset me and that the decor was not changing. Of course the usual pout and pity started. She was ignored. We moved again and the living room was blue. Of course first thing she asked was, what color is the living room? She came over a short time later and handed my husband a housewarming gift. She said she didn't want to upset me because I get so emotional about her decorating tastes being so different. LOL, it was green. She apologized for getting it wrong again. I laughed in front of her and said maybe our daughter could teach her some things. I always hoped she'd grow up, but she died at 76 before ever maturing. Don't be that guy. As a doctor or nurse, what is one disease or situation you never want to see again? A youngish woman, maybe in her 30s, was admitted to our ICU. She was scheduled for immediate brain surgery. Our intensivist, also our medical director, was her admitting doc. He explained her situation thus: she had diabetes that was very poorly controlled, if at all. People whose diabetes isn't well controlled often suffer from fungal infection, mostly benign types, like oral yeast and similar types of things. The excess sugars on the body provide food for fungus. But why the emergency brain surgery for this woman? Well, the doc had examined her in the ER and he explained it to us. His words were so chilling I'm sure I'll never forget them. He said, the minute I saw black tears coming from her eyes, I knew what she had, and I knew it wasn't going to be good. He went on to explain about the black tears. He sent her immediately for a CT of her brain and called a neurosurgeon. He further explained to us nurses, there's a very rare type of invasive fungal infection found almost exclusively in patients with poor diabetes control. Usually it's seen first on the hard palate of the mouth. It cannot be scraped off, however. This type of fungus, even when it's very small in appearance, sends out hyphae. You can imagine them as a type of roots, deep into the tissues they are near. And since it appears on the hard palate, the tissues right above it are the sinuses, tear ducts, eyes and brain. I'm afraid that, because it's rarely found quickly, and because she has black tears, it's probably already in her brain. It's called mucormycosis. She did not return from surgery. The hyphae had penetrated very deeply into her brain, too deeply for her to survive. Our doc was not surprised, but all we nurses were inordinately shocked. I never saw another case of this in my career and never want to again. Gives me the shudders. What is the most out-of-touch thing your boss has ever done at a meeting? At 4 p.m. he told us to compile a report and action plan ready for tomorrow's 8:30 a.m. meeting. Now to do this properly would take each of us a full day's work. All 7 of us protested, and asked for more time. I asked when he expected us to find the time, and he told us to work on it that night at home. I openly said sorry, that's unreasonable. I have a 90-minute drive home, then I'll be cooking dinner, and then helping with showers and homework. When that's done I have about an hour before I'm ready to fall asleep. His reply? Get your wife to make the dinner and shower the kids while you work on the report. And then he left the room. So we all united and decided not to do it. He went off his tree at 8:30 am the next morning when nothing was done. I had a word to the very nice HR lady about what he said, along with a list of people in the room who witnessed it. When he blew his gasket and wanted HR to issue warnings, she simply told him to reschedule the meeting for the following day, and let us work all day uninterrupted to prepare for it, in work time. What is the most amazing thing you overheard because people didn't think you understood their language? A friend and I were backpacking through Europe in 1990 and were in Paris on Bastille Day. We were sitting on the crowd barriers and watching the laser light show by the Arc de Triomphe when a group of 6 or 7 Iranian guys passed by. They were talking non-stop and walked by us multiple times, always speaking about us. It just so happened that my mother was from Iran and I was fairly fluent in Farsi, so I told my friend that I would handle it if they came over. They were being very explicit about what they could get me and or my friend to do with them intimate that night. After the third pass they stopped in front of us and the leader asked in French if I spoke French. I told him no, and he asked in 2 other languages if we spoke those languages. Each time I said no. He turned to his friends in Farsi and said I asked if she spoke French, German, and Italian, what else could it be? I then responded in Farsi, why don't you ask me if I speak Farsi? All but the leader scattered into the night like cockroaches when the light comes on. The leader went down on one knee addressing me formally as a lady begging my forgiveness, to which I replied in Farsi, I'm now a lady, what has changed? 2 minutes ago I was a whore. I didn't know if I'd be able to get my friend back to the hostel that night, she was laughing so hard. She looked at me and said I don't know what you said, but that was the funniest thing I've ever seen. How did everything go wrong with your crush? When I was 16 I took an SAT prep class to improve my score and get into a good college. The class was pretty boring, but I met the most interesting girl in the class. She was thin, fairly short, with light brown hair and green eyes. She always wore a green headband which I thought was cute. Her name was Connie. We hit it off immediately and spent most of the class whispering to each side by side at our desks. I spent about 3 weeks sitting next to her talking during the class. When the class was over we exchanged IM handles so we could keep in touch. This was in the early 2000s. About a year passed and we continued talking online. We got to know each other pretty well, but we lived on completely different sides of the city and it was quite a drive to visit each other, so being the young teens we never actually got together. Eventually I worked up the courage to ask her out for dinner. I set our date at a restaurant located between the both of us so we wouldn't have to drive too far. The time for our date rolled around and I headed to the restaurant to meet her. I walked in and saw her sitting in a booth with 2 older individuals at the far side of the establishment. She looked exactly like she did in the class, thin, light brown hair, green eyes, and she was wearing her signature green headband. I approached her and said hello. I gave her a hug and sat down next to her in the booth. I assumed these 2 older individuals across from us were her parents. Odd, I thought, but maybe they were there to chaperone. I could tell immediately something was wrong. The 2 older individuals looked very confused, surprised, almost bewildered. The look on Connie's face was also one of perplexity. Eventually she said, "Who are you?" I was shocked. I said, I'm Jason. Remember we set up a date for tonight? I assume these are your parents, it is very nice to meet you. And I reached out my hand to shake her parents' hands. They didn't return my handshake. Instead they simply looked at their daughter and said, "Oh, did you forget to tell us this, Sarah?" "Sarah?" I said. "You told me your name was Connie?" She looked absolutely puzzled and said, "Sorry, you must have me confused with someone else." "Oh. My mistake," I replied. Then scratched my head and headed out of the restaurant to my car. I was embarrassed. Maybe she just didn't want to go out with me, I thought. She could have at least just said no instead of leading me on the charade. Defeated and humiliated I decided to just head home. When I opened the door to my car I heard a voice behind me say, "Hey Jason." I turned around. It was a tall, light blonde-haired woman with a large round face and blue eyes. Do I know you?" I said. "It's me, Connie. We had a date planned, remember?" "Where are you going?" she said. "We went inside and had dinner." She was definitely Connie. She remembered all our previous conversations over the past year, but she looked nothing like the girl I met in class. When I asked her why she stopped wearing her green headband, she had no recollection of ever wearing or even owning this type of headband. How did everything go wrong when you took a DNA test? In my previous post, I said that my grandmother promised to tell everyone when my sister comes to town next week. Officially, that is still the plan, but my sister, who apparently missed her calling as a special prosecutor, got my grandmother to admit to her over the phone the story of what actually happened. And it is interesting. Without going too much into my family history, when I first noticed the inconsistencies in my DNA test, I had an early idea who might be my bio-paternal grandfather. Basically, my grandmother had a long-time family friend that she had known even before my grandfather PG. To try and distinguish between the two men, I am going to refer to them as PG for Polish grandpa and BG for bio-grandpa. She and this friend maintained contact for years and years, all the way until both of their spouses had died and they married each other. Their kids had grown up together even before they became step-siblings as adults, and they are still part of my extended family as aunts and uncles even though BG died when I was a baby, almost 30 years ago. Over the years, there has been a bit of mild speculation that BG had possibly fathered my dad's younger brother. No one really took it all that seriously, but he did look an awful lot like one of BG's and his wife's kids. Because of this, the day I got my test results and figured out what they probably meant, I called my sister and we ordered a test for her best friend, one of BG's grandchildren. Telling this information to Grandma was what finally made her admit it. I was going to be matched as a cousin with my sister's best friend, who, although considered a part of my extended family, should have been of no biological relation to me. But here's where it gets a little confusing. My grandmother claims that PG was sterile as the result of something that happened to him in World War II. She says all 3 of her children are biologically from BG, but that it was all done intentionally through artificial insemination. She desperately wants this to be kept a secret from everyone, including my dad and his siblings, because she is worried that people will assume the worst about her. My dad and his siblings were born in the early 1950s. Does anyone know what the odds of this were? How common was artificial insemination back then? Would someone have really used a friend as a donor? More than 3 separate times my grandmother had at least one miscarriage that I remember her telling me about at some point. My grandmother has a known history of rewriting events in her favor. I guess it really does not matter at this point why BG was the father, but it is frustrating to feel like she might just be throwing in more lies on top of everything. I cheated on my boyfriend with the stripper he was seeing almost daily. It was the best decision I ever made. My now ex-boyfriend was emotionally and verbally mean. He'd call me derogatory names when I didn't do something he wanted, and he'd make hurtful comments about my body. I'm not even overweight, but I have body dysphoria. I was crying every single day. I wanted to leave him, but I couldn't because I was emotionally dependent on him for everything, and we were living together. He started going to strip clubs and being open with me about and telling me he enjoys seeing women that look better than me. He went so often that I felt like he was cheating on me. I just had to go for myself and see what it was like. One night I went and decided to pay for a dance. It just so happens I got a dance from one of the strippers he sees. Little did I know meeting her was going to be the best thing that ever happened to me. I was a bit drunk and tipsy, so I overshared with her about my boyfriend and told her about him. She said she knew who I was talking about because he'd always talk badly about me to the dancers. I just broke down and cried right there like a big idiot in front of her. She gave me a tissue to wipe my tears and gave me a huge hug. She said she didn't know what my boyfriend was talking about because she thought I was beautiful. It made me cry even more because it made my day for a girl to think I'm pretty at least. I kept going every so often. Eventually we exchanged numbers and started going out. I was so surprised to see she dressed like a boy when she wasn't working and to learn that she was gay. She told me she doesn't like men at all, but she makes good money off of them. People really surprise me a lot. She has the cutest personality ever. She opens doors for me and would ask me if I was tired or if I had anything to eat. I realized I was attracted to her and she was attracted to me. This kept going on for a few months. One night she kissed me and told me to leave him and to move in with her. We had intercourse and she made me look at myself in the mirror and tell myself I'm beautiful. I thought it was time to leave him because at that point I realized I deserved better than to be emotionally, mentally and verbally harmed almost every day by someone I used to love. While he was at work she helped me pack up everything. I sent him a text detailing why I was leaving him. I changed my number and blocked him on everything. I live with her far away from him and haven't heard from him in months, and honestly I'm glad. I don't care about your opinions on my cheating on my abusive boyfriend. I have no regrets. If I never cheated on him I would have never found the power to leave his toxic and abusive butt and be with a girl who loves all of me and makes me feel so beautiful. We've been together for 6 months and I'm still so in love with her. She's still the same loving and sweet person she was when I first met her. And she's amazing in bed, like full-blown amazing. She makes me come all the time and he hardly ever did. Maybe only once a month if I'm being honest. She works at a different club now and I found a new job I'm starting soon and I'm so excited for new stuff to come my way. I feel so blessed and lucky.